Hi everyone, I'm Amy B. Cooper. I am a photography business consultant and I'm so excited to have with me today Catherine Couturier of the Catherine Couturier Photography Fine Art Gallery in Houston, Texas. Probably one of the best, if not the best in Texas. Catherine, thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be a gallery owner and some of the artists you're representing.
Sure. So I got out of college and I had an art history degree and wanted to work in a gallery. That was the extent of what I knew. But my husband is from France, hence the fancy name, and couldn't work right away. And so I had to do some other jobs for about 8 months because I had to pay bills by myself. And then the minute that he got his work papers, I quit those other jobs and started looking for what galleries were hiring. And the gallery that ended up hiring me was called John Cleary Gallery, which was at that time the only fine art photography gallery in Houston and very highly respected. So I started working there in 1999. So it's been almost 21 years. Unfortunately, after I'd been running the gallery for 8.5 years, John was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died a month later. So in 2008, when I had literally like an 18-month-old on my hip that was going to work with me every day, I go into work one day, John says, we need to talk. It's not diabetes, it's pancreatic cancer. I'm gonna be dead in a month. You need to figure out what we're doing about this gallery. And I kind of went, what? And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. You're smart, figure it out. So I went, okay. So I went home that night, and after the baby was bed, my husband and I think, drank a lot of beer and tried to come up with what could we possibly do here. So we figured out a situation we thought would work for John and would work for us, where I could buy the gallery and still work with the work that he owned and all the same artists if they were willing and things like that. And so that is unfortunately how I became the owner of a gallery. I was actually talking to a client a couple days ago about, would I own a gallery at 43 had it not happened that way when I was 30? And the answer is, I don't know. Would I have been too scared to go off on my own? Would I have been too nervous? Would I have not been able to come up with enough money or a good enough business plan, or just not the confidence to do it? Or would I have, would it be that John and I both just had photography galleries, or, what would have happened? And there is no way to know. But I can tell you that I would not have owned a gallery at 30 had it not gone the way it went. So the gallery, technically I opened my gallery, which was still called John Cleary Gallery, in May of 2008. And then I kept the name. John asked me to keep it for 2 years for continuity. I kept it for almost 5. So I changed it, or maybe not. It doesn't matter. I think I changed it in 2012, or maybe it was 2013, to my own name. So when people say, when was your gallery opened? I say, it's kind of a long story, because I've literally been sitting at the same desk in the same space since 1999. And so I always say it was established in 96 when John opened it, 99 when I started running it, 2008 when it became mine, and then 2012 when I renamed it. So yeah, so that's kind of the origin story. And it's an interesting, way to become a gallery owner, because galleries aren't really saleable businesses, because they're all about relationships. Mm-hmm. I can't call, one of my artists and say, hey, you don't know Amy, but I'm just going to give her like $500,000 worth of your stuff and it'll be fine. And you can trust her, don't worry. It doesn't really work like that. And it doesn't work that way with clients. That if you have to have that relationship with your clients and with the artist, or the business can't work. Mm-hmm. So it's unusual, I would say, for someone to not have started their gallery from the ground up.
Tell us about some of the artists you're representing.
Sure. So I have a really wide range. There is another photography gallery in Houston now, and there's been a few others over the years, but in general, I don't have to be very niche-y, which is nice. If I were in New York and there were 80 other photography galleries, I would have to really kind of dig out something specific, but I don't. So people say, what do you specialize in? And I say photography, and they say, what kind? And I say, good photography. So I have, old black and white things. I have, vintage work by artists who aren't with us anymore. I've got super contemporary work that's all digital. I've got stuff that's kind of in between. I've got things that are a lot of different mediums within photography because I really like that. So I've got, it's not just, straight photographs on pieces of paper. I've got things on glass. The show we've got up right now is printed on silk, and it's embroidered, and there's lots of different types. But the next show I'm having is going to be, archival pigment ink prints of straight film, black and white photographs. So I don't have to be too specific.
Mm-hmm. I pulled up a couple.
Okay.
I'll share the screen. So tell us about this.
So this is one of my favorite pieces by one of my favorite artists, which is Maggie Taylor. And this one's called Girl with Bee Dress. And it's been sold out forever and ever. And I'm very lucky to have a very large one in the gallery at the moment. But I'm also very, very lucky to have a small one on my wall in my house. But Maggie, what she does is she works with kind of Victorian era images, so tintypes, daguerreotypes, things of that nature, from the kind of late 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where she finds her kind of main figure. And then she just starts to work. So in this one, for example, she really likes the head of the little girl, but she didn't like the body. So it's actually a self-portrait of her body. Mm-hmm. And then she found some dead bees on her windowsill one morning. And so she scans them directly. She'll just put things directly on her scanner, or she'll photograph them, or she'll kind of draw digitally, in Photoshop. And this is an earlier piece, but the current pieces are so detailed, they take about 4 to 6 weeks to complete.
Wow.
They're incredibly detailed. This is another of our favorites. This is Mabry Campbell, who's from Texas. He's originally from Dallas, but lives in Houston now. I think this is a really stunning photograph of the water wall in Williams Tower in Houston. Mm-hmm. You see so many people shooting the water wall that you almost never want to see another picture of it again. But this was such an unusual one. And it's actually currently the cover of Texas Highways magazine. So I'm Mabry for that.
This is so cool because it looks like a composite almost.
It does, and it's not. And anytime you go over there in Houston, you always see people taking prom pictures or they're getting engaged there, and it's a Philip Johnson structure. And so, you're so used to seeing it kind of vertically, as you see it in real life, that when he first showed me this, it was almost like I had vertigo. I couldn't even figure out kind of what was up and down.
Yeah, I think I just figured it out now that we're looking at it.
Yeah, which is fun for me because, at this point, it's hard to show me a photograph of anything that I haven't seen before. So you have to be able to show it to me, in theory, in a new way. Because I always say, like, if you're going to show me pictures of sand dunes, the Westons did that. Like, they really kind of cornered the market back in the day. So if you're going to show me a picture of a dune, it's going to have to be either so different that it's more, it's interesting in a different way, or that it's just such a great photograph that I kind of can't say no.
And you have some really iconic work in your gallery. Like, this is one of my favorites.
It's one of kind of everybody's favorites. There's really only 2 photographs that I think every single person loves. One is this one, which is called Rue Mouffetard by Cartier-Bresson. Because, the boy looks so smug, and he's got the big wine bottles, and the little girl in the background just kind of clasping her hands and being adorable, and everything about this is like happy and wonderful. And the other one is, we call it Dog Legs by Elliot Erwitt. Same thing, there's a little dog dressed up, there's really like Great Dane legs, and then there's these kind of very chic boots in the middle, and everyone who comes in is just kind of surprised and happy, and they're just kind of across the board great photographs. This is actually, Rue Mouffetard's one of the most printed photographs of all time. I think there's between 500 and 1,000 prints of it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. It sells incredibly easily for a lot of money anytime I have it.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's so fun to go in your gallery and look at prints and look at all the books. I love it.
Thank you.
So I work with a lot of commercial and editorial clients, photographers. And there are definitely a lot of them who have an interest in also doing fine art, which is a completely different kind of business. So that's why I wanted to talk to you today and get some of your advice. Tell us a little bit about how a photographer goes about developing a relationship with a gallery, or becoming a fine artist? How would you even define that, a fine art photographer?
I mean, that's definitely, hard. It's like what they say in the 70s about porn. I don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it. So that's kind of how it is, like how can I say exactly what makes a fine art photograph versus a commercial photograph? I don't know. Is it just because it's not. I mean, it's not just about kind of the overall intention, because there's lots of photographs. Again, Elliot Irwood, who I mentioned, did a ton of commercial work, and some of his most famous fine art images started from ad campaigns. I mean, that he was hired by, so and so, BMW or Puerto Rico. I mean, he had these huge clients. Well, so yeah, I mean, he's a great photographer, and a lot of good stuff came out of that. All the fashion photographers, same thing. I mean, those were all shoots for Chanel or Balenciaga or Vogue or whatever it was. But what takes it out of one realm into the other, it's almost impossible to define. I guess maybe a saleability to an art collector versus a product consumer, something like that. I'm not really sure. But there's definitely can be crossover. I mean, there's Mabry Campbell, who you brought up with the Waterwall image, does a ton of commercial work, especially shooting big business interiors for Heinz and Skanska and big builders like that all over the state. And then, he just does other work that's more fine art work.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that someone could consider themselves a fine artist, or be in a position to approach a gallery with just a handful of images, or do gallerists prefer to see someone who's doing project after project?
So that's going to depend a little bit on the gallery. In general, you need definitely more than a few images, because, if I'm thinking about carrying somebody's work, I've got to think of it as a show if I'm actually going to represent them. And so if I'm going to ever have a show, there needs to be at least 30 kind of images that I think are saleable, enough to put on the wall that all look great together and things of that nature. A lot of photographers, when I do portfolio reviews, will have a lot of good images, but they don't have anything to do with each other. I mean, they're just completely random. And so there'll be, a black and white tree, and then there'll be a color picture of a child, and then there'll be, all sepia toned picture of their grandma, whatever it is. But there's no rhyme or reason to it. And when you start to get into the world of fine art photography and what galleries are looking for and what collectors are looking for, there really needs to be kind of a singular vision that artist is bringing. And that's absolutely the hardest part of being probably a professional, any kind of artist, but definitely a photographer, because, it has to be that if you go out and do take a picture of a tree and then a little girl and then your grandma, somehow I know it's all Amy's work. And how do you accomplish that? And so artists, a lot of time, they start projects and they're really broad. Like, I want to discuss water usage in America. And I go, no, that's way too big. You can't have a bunch of pictures that are going to look great if it's too broad. So I'm like, okay, no, you need to do water usage in one town of 200 people in America at the same time of day, the same year, shot exactly the same. Like, it's got to start getting more and more and more specific to make it cohesive.
Yes.
And people struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's really hard because it's not about technique at that point. It's not anything you can really learn. That's got to just come from the gut of the artist. So
I think you could say that a little bit for commercial work as well. It has to look like that person. So I know a lot of galleries don't accept submissions. How would a photographer catch the attention of a gallery?
So we do look at submissions. I think we may have changed to not send us anything right now because our mail has been really spotty, unless it fits in an envelope, because we've been getting those, but packages and things, I've been nervous. But so if they have a submission policy, follow the submission policy. I mean, that's number one. I always tell artists that if you want this to be your job, you have to treat it like a job. And one of the things is following the rules to apply for that job, which is basically what a submission policy is. So I can't tell you how many times people have read mine, and mine are really specific, and they say, it says you want to see something printed. Can I just email you a link to my website? no, you can't. And now I don't like you because you're making my life harder and you're bothering me. But more so than that, it's like if you can't follow those basic directions at the beginning, then it means you're probably difficult. You could be difficult to work with, and you think you're special. And none of us are that special. You know, that we all got to work together here because galleries and artists, or, you know, gallery directors and managers and owners, that you really do have to work really closely together. And, you know, it's impossible to do that with people you don't like. Because it all of a sudden it kind of taints the work. So I've sent back artists before that I was selling a lot of their work because they were just driving me insane, and it just wasn't worth it. It was making me nuts, and there's just too many artists out there, you know. So treat it like a job and things like that. The best way, really, and this is hard, is to have someone introduce you. You know, so meeting another artist that the gallery already represents that can kind of speak, you know, on your behalf and say she's not crazy, her work is good and she's not crazy, um, or, you know, a collector or whatever it is, you know. But if they don't have a submission policy listed, it's totally fine to email and say, hi, I'd like to submit, you know, my work to your gallery for consideration. What is your submission policy, or is there a way I can make an appointment to show you my work? Again, a lot of galleries aren't going to do that. I do, for the most part. I like looking at work, but that's not true for everybody. So just try to follow the rules they've set, and then if not, then try to get introduced somehow.
That's great advice. Are there any other platforms for representation of fine artists besides brick and mortar galleries?
I mean, you know, I think in a year we'll see more and more things popping up that'll just be online. You know, I think photography is easier as far as selling art to do it online than it is to do some other, you know, more, you know, larger, more three-dimensional objects, because it's just really easy to share them, and they're for the most part flat, as opposed to if you have sculpture, you're having to shoot it correctly and make sure that you're showing it from all the angle, and it's just a hassle. Plus, another good thing about photography is I can sell one to you and I can sell one to someone else as well. So it just is a lot easier that way. It's also a lot easier to ship it. It's a lot easier to take it somewhere and show it to someone in their home or whatever it is. So I definitely think there'll be more people working privately where they don't have a space at all. As far as, you know, there definitely are, I think, people out there always trying to kind of be a middleman a little bit between, like, not quite a gallery, but not really anything else either, and not really an art consultant because they actually only work with a handful of artists. And there's probably eventually going to be a job that's sort of all of those things, but it for the most part, I think people still want to have the option to go see art. And I was just, the Menil in Houston just opened on Saturday, and I ran over there because I haven't been in that space in so long, and I wanted to see some things again in real life. And you lose something if you can't go see them. And until you really know a dealer or the artist's work, you really do want to see it in person somehow. And, you know, I don't know if that means there'll be more pop-ups, or if people will work kind of in co-ops, maybe, where they, you know, there's a bunch of people that rent space, and then they can all, you know, kind of like those space sharing offices. I mean, there may be something like that coming. I don't know of anything right now that I think is especially effective. But I think COVID is probably going to lead to some interesting ideas.
Yes, that's interesting to think about. So your fine art photographers, the ones that are also doing commercial work, do you find that they tend to separate their websites, or do they use, yeah.
Usually, because, you know, you're just pitching to different people, right? I mean, and the work usually is very different. And so, you know, I'll see people at portfolio reviews and they've got both. But I would say that as a collector, or even as a, you know, someone who might be looking for a commercial artist, if I'm looking at you for commercial, that's all I'm looking for. So just give me that. And if I'm looking at fine art, I don't want to jump onto a car ad. You know, that's just going to annoy me more than anything else. So I would say have two different websites.
Two websites.
And they can link, and there can be some crossover, but I would not keep it all on one if you can help it, you know. So have Amy Cooper commercial and Amy Cooper fine art photography, or whatever it is. So.
That's great. And can you speak a little bit to how a fine art photographer can market themselves if they are with a gallery, or is it the responsibility of the gallery to do all of the marketing? Is it a shared thing?
It's a shared thing. I mean, it depends on the artist. You know, I mean, I've definitely got some artists who are great at it, and they're great and they're social and they've got a big peer group and they love going to, this gallery and that event, and they're flying all over and they're great. And then I've got some who don't want to do any of that, or it's just not their skill set. I mean, I was at a gallery one time. This was not my gallery. And I was standing next to an artist, and I was standing next to the gallery owner who I knew. And I said, "What's your next show?" And the gallery owner said, and the artist just kind of like turned white next to me. And I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Oh, well, at openings, he gets super drunk and kind of racist." And so then, of course, the gallery owner goes, wait, what? No, I mean, you can't be kind. Is he just racist? Like out loud in my gallery drunk? And she's like, "Oh, probably." Well, so, okay. So that person you need to kind of take out of the public sphere a little bit, as opposed to people who can work it. I've got one artist who's so great on social media. I mean, she just works her little fingers to the bone. And then some people, that's just not their bag. So you have to really look at what the strengths are of the gallery, the gallery employees, and what the strengths are of the artist. So sometimes they need to not be involved. I did have an artist one time who responded to a guy and was trying to forward me the email, but did it wrong.
Mhm.
And so she sent the reply to me to him, in which she called him an asshole. That's the problem. She needs to not respond to emails.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it depends.
Mm.
But I would say that, in general, it's a 50-50 split, because there really are 50-50 responsibilities. That I'm not going to tell the artist how to print or, what to make or anything like that. And in general, they don't tell me how to run my business.
Okay.
That I have artists who said, "Oh, can I install my own show?" And I go, "You can totally do it, but if I don't like it, I'm going to change it because it's my name on the door." Like, I have a certain way I like things done. But in general, it's a team, it's teamwork. So whatever they can bring to the table, whatever I can bring to the table, we've got a common goal.
That's great. And tell us, how's business been for you this year?
It's been okay. I mean, it was good in 2019, and first quarter of 2020 was going good and like going well. And then COVID happened, and I think we all went, "Oh God, we're never going to sell anything ever again." Well, no, first we all thought it was just going to be 2 weeks, and then we were okay. I was excited for the break, actually. But that did not last. It turns out that it was longer than 2 weeks. And 6 months in, it's gone so much better than I expected, because I kind of thought I'll never sell a photograph again. I won't be able to go. It won't be legal to go. What am I going to do? So I came up with an idea to do a series I called Safe in the Studio. And I had my artist write about what they'd been doing during COVID. And then at the end, post some images. And then we offered those at a discount for a week. And that was really popular. I thought, "Oh, is this going to be boring? Are people not going to like it?" But my clients loved it. So that was really, really nice to be able to kind of engage. And a lot of my collectors told me they liked it because it gave them something to read that was interesting, as opposed to just reading about politics in the news. So that was kind of neat. And then once we could go to by appointment, people started making appointments. And that kind of shocked me too. And so I decided to change my show in, I think, June. And when I talked to the artist, Kate Breakey, that I've got up now, she said, "How long is the show going to last?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have any idea what's going to happen. I'm going to change it. I'm going to put it on the wall. We're not having an opening, and we'll just see what happens." And it's gone well. Would it have gone better if it had been a year ago? I don't have any way of knowing. But I have been very, very pleasantly surprised. And I've been incredibly touched and thankful that my clients have been supportive, because I'm sure at least a couple of the sales were pity sales. But I will take them and use them to pay my rent.
Yes. Well, that's great. And this is an opportunity for people to be innovative in so many different areas. Are you seeing innovation or change that you want to speak to in other areas of the industry, maybe with art fairs and things like that? I know a lot of fairs are having to get canceled or I don't know, are they moving online? What are you seeing?
So I have not done an art fair. I considered doing one that was basically through Photo LA, and they were only doing it online, and they had these kind of virtual rooms and all this kind of stuff, and it wasn't very expensive. And I thought, oh, I should do it to be supportive and just see what happens. But I didn't because I didn't have enough time, and then I had even less time by the time it showed up. So I'm really glad I didn't because I think I would have fumbled it. But most of the people I talked to said that it went a lot, kind of like everything, it went better than they expected.
Mhm.
I think that it definitely needs to be a time of innovation. I think that a lot of gallery owners, and we saw this in the recession in 2008 to kind of 2011, 2012, that a lot of people don't know how to adapt at all to anything.
Mhm.
And they didn't do very well because all they knew how to do was sit in their gallery and wait for people to come in,
Mhm.
and that's not how this works anymore. Photography is more expensive than it used to be, and all of that. But also, it's easy to think you can just share things on Instagram and make a lot of money, and that's not actually enough either. As I said, we started kind of this little blog series that went really well. We were just touching base with our clients more. But what a lot of galleries I realized were doing was just trying to do it the regular way. So they were trying to have regular hours. And I was like, for what? If no one's going to come, and granted, I'm a little younger than most gallery owners, and I have two kids still at home that I have to deal with school, and they have to keep them alive and all of that stuff. So it's easier sometimes for me to be home. But especially if no one's going to come, then why sit there all day? Also, I don't want random yahoos at this point walking in who might be insane. Because right now, you don't know that someone's not going to walk in, take off their mask, and spit on your floor. I mean, that sounds terrible, but that's kind of the world we're living in, it feels like now. So I like this whole by appointment thing, and I don't see why I should have to change. And I don't miss openings at all because
Uh,
openings are the worst. I mean, they're fun if you're going to one, but if you have to work it, oh man.
I can
And then
imagine.
there's a lot of people who just come to drink, and there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who come to show you how smart they are and that they know more about everything than you do. No, thank you.
Oh
Um,
my
but what a lot of people were doing, a lot of galleries and emails and things, that they were setting up these virtual viewing rooms.
God. Mhm.
I didn't do any of that. A lot of people are requiring you to like sign up to have access to them.
Mm.
And that annoys me. I don't want to give somebody my email address. Like, I'll sign up for your website, for your mailing list, or I won't. But
Mhm.
don't force me to do it to be able to see work.
Right.
Now I'm not going to buy anything from you. So I don't know that I agree with some of the innovations people are doing, but I respect that people are trying. It's definitely been an excuse for a lot of the older dealers I know to start working privately, especially in New York and London, where the rents are just so crazy.
Yeah.
They're going, oh, screw this. I can just work from home now.
Yeah.
And more power to them. And if I were, 63 or 73 or 83 instead of 43, I'd probably think the same. I feel like I'm probably going to outlive this pandemic, maybe the next one too.
I hope so.
Depending on how fast and furious they start coming. But more than likely, I'm going to have a career, at least I hope so, for another 40 years. So I think I need to stay, brick and mortar, having, the ability for people to come in, but also try to think of what I can do when I'm not sitting at my desk.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a crazy time. Thank you so much for chatting with us. This has been really cool
Oh,
information.
good. Anytime. You can tell I like to talk, so literally anytime.
I know, and I love talking to you. I can't wait to see you again in person.
Good. Yes.
And I will put a link to your website and your Instagram. And any last advice for photographers who are wanting to dive into fine art?
I don't think so. Keep taking photographs, like take them and take them and take them, and see what you come up with, especially right now when people are kind of, stuck at home a little bit. See if you can do something interesting with that, because a lot of people are trying. See what you can do with, just the world around you right now when the world has gotten a little bit smaller. And see if that leads to something great or if it leads to garbage. And then you can just forget that I ever said it.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Amy. Bye.